Tom Cameron's wages.
Brett Huntley. David Berman. John Chance.
Tom Brokaw.
Checkpoint 12. Insurgents in Iraq grow even bolder. A murderous strike on the same target 2 days in a row. Center of the storm, harsh words from some Republicans for Donald Rumsfeld as the White House defends the defense secretary. Exclusive new polling tonight on how he stands in America. We'll talk to Tim Russert. The fleecing of America, internet crooks. This couple had their bank account cleaned out. What you need to know so it doesn't happen to you. And sleepless nights, a growing industry to help sleep-deprived children and their parents get some good shut-eye.
NBC News World Headquarters in New York. This is NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams.
Good evening. In a war so far without end, the insurgents in Iraq, while often outgunned and decidedly low-tech, have nonetheless managed to hit the U.S.-controlled coalition each day for the last 2 days in the same place and in a very public way. The U.S. once claimed to have broken the back of the insurgency. That now seems long ago. And since then, the coalition has learned that in Iraq, progress is often answered with violence. We begin here tonight with NBC's Ned Colt in Baghdad.
Two suicide.
Now to the civilian chief of the United States Armed Forces, Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. He was the youngest man ever to have the job. That was 5 presidents ago. He is the oldest man ever to serve in the job, and the most controversial in decades. As he prepares for yet another term, suddenly the attacks on him are increasing. Before we look at American opinions of him and our exclusive new polling numbers tonight, here is NBC's Jim Miklaszewski at the Pentagon.
Strong disagreements.
The highly decorated Vietnam POWs, NBC News, the Pentagon.
And with us now for more on Secretary Rumsfeld and the lightning rod role he continues to play in this administration, NBC News Washington Bureau Chief and the moderator of Meet the Press, Tim Russert. Tim, Rumsfeld is not new to Washington, though. Why these new attacks and why now?
Well, Brian, the question asked by the young officer in Kuwait last week was the real catalyst. And it's a unique position for Secretary Rumsfeld because he's being attacked by people who do not believe he has been hawkish enough on the war in terms of troop commitment, and also attacked by people who oppose the war from day one. But the words we're hearing about cavalier and callous are obviously beginning to take hold. Top military brass are saying this is more than just transformation by the Secretary of Defense. He is being obstinate in mismanaging the war, quote unquote. But as Jim Miklaszewski said, as long as the president believes he's the man for the job, he will be in that job.
And Tim, I know you're releasing some new numbers tonight from our NBC News Wall Street Journal poll on this very subject.
Absolutely, Brian. If you look at this, only about a third of the American people have a favorable opinion of Secretary Donald Rumsfeld, 34%, and 38% say have a disapproval or negative rating. Compare that to just a few months ago in May, and you see it was the exact opposite, 39 to 33. Those are extremely high negatives for a cabinet secretary, particularly a Secretary of Defense. It is a war. Donald Rumsfeld is controversial. He does take no prisoners, and those numbers reflect it.
And Tim, on another topic, I know the political fallout continued today over the failed White House nomination of Bernard Kerik.
Short term, Brian, there are a lot of questions raised about the White House vetting process. Why didn't they know? And if they did know, then why did the name go forward? Those questions have to still be answered. Long term, many people believe Rudy Giuliani will be running for president, and already some of his competitors are saying this is an indication of his character, of his judgment. What did he know about Bernard Kerik? Why did he hire him as police chief? Why did he recommend him so forcefully for to be head of the Homeland Security? This is going to play out for some time, both now and in the 2008 presidential race, if Rudy Giuliani decides to run.
Tim Russert in our Washington Bureau tonight. Tim, thanks. Also in Washington today, President George W. Bush bestowed the highest possible civilian honor, the Medal of Freedom, on 3 of the central architects of his Iraq policy. One is retired General Tommy Franks, who oversaw the initial invasion of Iraq. Also, former Iraq Administrator Paul Bremer, the top civilian U.S. official there after the war, and former CIA Director George Tenet, who left that job in July. The president said all 3 men had played, quote, pivotal roles in great events and made the U.S. more secure. There is news tonight on the economy. The Federal Reserve Board met on interest rates, and as expected, the key Fed funds rate was raised once again, up a quarter point to 2.25%. It's the fifth rate increase in 6 months. What's the signal for the economy overall, and what will this mean to the American family budget? With us tonight from the NASDAQ market site here in New York, NBC's Ann Thompson. Ann, good evening.
Good evening, Brian. The Federal Reserve seems pretty pleased with the economy despite record high energy prices. Today, the Fed said the economy is growing moderately, inflation is in check, and the jobs market appears to be getting better gradually. Now, when the Fed started to raise interest rates back in June, some worried that it would stunt the then fragile growth, but economists say that the Fed's policy of steady as she goes, quarter-point hikes has kept the economy on track, and the economy is now growing at a healthy 4%. Brian?
And what about where all of this matters for most families, consumer rates?
Well, Brian, mortgage rates have actually fallen since the Fed started to take action in June. The 30-year fixed-rate mortgage is now down more than 0.5%. Credit card interest rates, the national average stands at over 14%. That's up almost a full percentage point. And as far as savers go, if you are saving money in 3-month, 6-month, or 1-year certificate of deposits, you have seen an increase in your interest rate of about 0.5%.
And Ann, what about things like the tax cuts that the administration's been proud of? Is there evidence they're still on the job and working?
Well, Brian, their influence is waning, and many believe that this economy is now self-sustaining, and they point to 3 things: increased business spending, a strong housing market, and the consumer who, while he or she is not setting records this holiday season, is still spending. And those 3 things, they say, bode well for this economy. Ann Thompson at the NASDAQ market tonight, and thanks. On Wall Street today, the market seemed satisfied with the rate news. The Dow was up a little more than 38 points. The NASDAQ was up just over 11. Up next, as we continue, NBC News in depth. A massive electronic fleecing of America. Thieves stole thousands from their bank account, and the bank says it's their fault. How to make sure it doesn't happen to you. And later, to sleep, perchance to dream. Fat chance if you have a newborn baby at home. Now there's a new industry of baby sleep consultants, but can they help? NBC News in depth tonight, the fleecing of America. It used to be so easy to spot a bank robber, what with the mask, often a note, a gun. They'd walk away with cold, hard cash. These days, however, bank robbers never have to leave home. No need to write a note or pack a pistol. All they have to do, and are doing, is to crack a few codes, press a few keys, and they can get away with your information and thus your money. Here is NBC's Tom Costello.
5 of the color, 3 of the black.
From a small Miami warehouse, Joe Lopez and his wife Farah keep track of every penny from a computer supply business they started 3 years ago. The last day cure. So if you transmit your bank account information over the internet, you do so at your own risk. But if your credit card is stolen and used fraudulently online, very often it's the merchant who's responsible. The Federal Trade. Tom Costello, NBC News, Miami.
By the way, if you're looking for more on how to protect yourself from electronic banking fraud, there is a lot more information available on our website, nightly.msnbc.com. We'll take a break here, and when we come back, after a tragedy, a college campus prepares to go dry, but will students find a way to drink anyway? Before 1998, if you'd told someone to go Google something, they would have looked at you strangely. These days, of course, it's a noun, it's a verb, and it's an internet powerhouse. Today, we learn Google, the powerful search engine, is getting even more powerful by adding millions of books from the world's best libraries to its search engine. This project involves scanning and converting books to digital files. Oxford, Harvard, Stanford, University of Michigan, the New York Public Library are all set to participate with at least parts of their vast collections. Google, which is loaded with cash from an IPO earlier this year, won't say how much all this will cost or how long it will take. Now to a tragedy on a college campus that has brought about an equal and opposite reaction by college administrators. The University of Oklahoma is about to go dry because of a student's death blamed on drinking. The question here is, by kicking beer and booze off campus, can you keep them out of campus life? Here is NBC's Jim Cummins. Tonight, the French are the proud owners of a new record. The tallest bridge in the world opened there today. Taller than the Eiffel Tower, longer than the Champs-Élysées. It gives drivers a ride through the sky and right through the mountains. It provides a new link for tourists and travelers on their way from Paris to the French Riviera. When we come back here tonight, can they ever really end sleepless nights for those new parents?
NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams. Brought to you in part by AFLAC. Ask about it at work.
Starting Thursday on NBC News, airport insecurity, unguarded checkpoints, screeners stealing from bags. Since 9/11, security is supposed to be better, but are you safer? Watch today, Nightly News, MSNBC, MSNBC.com, and your local NBC station. Airport insecurity starting this Thursday on NBC News.
If you ever raised an infant, you can probably spot the parent of an infant from about a mile away. Puffy eyes, easily irritable, able to sleep at the drop of a hat. They just can't get any sleep when they're supposed to. It is a grueling job, but does it have to take such a toll? Increasingly, experts are saying no. In conjunction with the Wall Street Journal, we get more tonight from a fellow parent around here, NBC's Rahima Ellis.
Mommy, kiss goodnight.
Looking at the Peters family today, New York.
It does get better. Some of us prefer the teen years, but if you're in the thick of it right now, you can read all about this in tomorrow morning's edition of the Wall Street Journal. That is NBC Nightly News for this Tuesday, December 14th, 2004. I'm Brian Williams reporting tonight from New York. We'll look for you right back here tomorrow evening. Good night.
Tomorrow.